Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Swamp Secrets, exposing regulatory dark matter. I'm your host, Andrew Langer. I'm director of the CPAC Foundation's Center for Regulatory Freedom. I got two things I want to talk to you all about today. First, we've got some breaking news. Our good friends at the American Action Forum, they have a new report out. We're going to bring them on, somebody from AAF, on with us hopefully next week to talk about it. But you know how I've been talking that the Biden administration has increased the direct cost of regulations by about $750 billion in the first 3 years of the administration. Well, AAF has done some other calculations, and based upon their numbers, their assessment of it, and this includes a much, much more careful, I think, assessment of the number of regulations that this administration has put out, they are now saying that in the first 3.5 years of the Biden administration, that regulatory costs have skyrocketed by an astounding $1.3 trillion. And remember, that's in direct regulatory costs. And as we talk about here at the Center for Regulatory Freedom, we know that for every dollar in direct regulatory costs, there's a $19 multiplier in lost opportunity costs. What do I mean by that? I mean that when the government takes capital out of a business or takes a spending choice away from your family and forces you to spend your resources or a business's resources on somebody else's mandate, it's time and money that they cannot invest in their own business, right? It's not just if an employee is sitting there filling out paperwork for the federal government, it's not that you're just losing money by paying them to fill out paperwork for the government, but in terms of the productive time that that employee is missing out on, you know, that has a cost to business and the economy, et cetera. If you're forced to buy a newfangled pizza oven because your pizza oven pollutes too much, that's money you can't spend in your business buying more sauce, expanding, getting other equipment, hiring new employees, all kinds of things that you might otherwise want to do. So it's not $1.3 trillion. It's about $25 trillion in lost opportunity cost to the economy. And I just tweeted this out earlier. When you think about what we're talking about these days in terms of budgets and spending, federal budgets, federal spending and debts and the deficit, imagine if we were infusing tens of trillions of dollars back into our economy and how we might be able to wipe out these kinds of debts and deficits that we're dealing with today. All of these things make sense, especially, by the way, in the context of the new economic numbers that came out this week, with GDP slowing down considerably in the first quarter of 2024. The left says that regulations don't have an economic cost. And if they really believe that, then they would actually put that out on paper and measure it, but they're no longer choosing to measure regulatory costs. They just want to talk about benefits. But the point of regulation, right, at its core, the whole idea of regulation is that it's supposed to raise the cost of doing the wrong thing such that it makes more economic sense to do the right thing, whatever that right thing happens to be. That's the essence of it all. But at what point and at what cost? That's the issue of diminishing returns. Where do we want to go? Anyway, I congratulate our friends at AAF on producing this report. As I said, we'll get somebody on from there to do it. That's part of what I wanted to talk about today. The second thing is an op-ed that I wrote with my colleague David Safavian, who is the executive vice president here at CPAC, on United Health. Now, the CEO of United Health is going before Congress, both the House and the Senate next week, to answer questions about their business practices and a whole bunch of things having to do with the healthcare economy. Now, as you all know, you may not know, in fact, we at the CPAC Foundation, we are the leaders of a coalition that is currently called the Coalition Against Socialized Medicine, looking at what is going on in the healthcare world. This is something that is near and dear to my heart for a whole host of reasons. I like to talk about the fact that we tend to look at healthcare in America in a very wrong way. Not going to get too far into the weeds on that. We tend to focus on it as an insurance problem. It's not really an insurance problem. It really is about the supply of medical care. Like everything else, it can be a basic macroeconomic problem. But the point is that since both the Affordable Care Act was passed, healthcare costs and health insurance costs have gone up. It has allowed for the consolidation so that you have this United Health Group standing at the pinnacle, being a giant amongst healthcare corporations, really having a near monopoly in the field. And the questions that need to be asked is, what kind of impact on health insurance costs and medical care costs does this have? And should we not be talking about some kind of antitrust, I'm not going to say investigation, but analysis of the situation with United Health? Oh, and most importantly, maybe not most importantly, but important in all of this, is United Health's relationship with AARP. Now, we talked about this at the big conference, the big CPAC conference back in February. And I know a lot of you out there, you don't know, you think, okay, well, let me see if I can bifurcate, if I can separate the AARP's services I use in loose quotes, from their advocacy as an organization. And I hate to tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, you can't. The problem is that the AARP is, in many people's estimation, is a licensing brand that is licensed to all kinds of entities and services out there that don't really provide the services that you need. But the bottom line is that backfills the AARP's coffers to fund their ability to engage in all kinds of advocacy that goes foursquare against the kind of conservative principles that you believe in. And the end result here is, this relationship between United Health and AARP, is you have this incredibly large lobbying entity that is lobbying for all kinds of policies that serve to grow the size of government and involve government more and more in your daily lives, while also helping this entity, United Health, that is able to charge ever higher fees for insurance, ever higher prices for medical care that gets delivered to people. And somebody needs to talk about this. Oh, and the other part of this hearing, and this op-ed that David and I did, because we also talk in this op-ed about the relationship between what's going on with these entities and the Inflation Reduction Act. So we all know that was a contradiction in terms. It didn't reduce inflation. It didn't help people. It allowed the Biden administration to engage in a great deal of mischief. And what do I mean by that? It meant that Joe Biden, despite the fact that he promised that he would never cut Medicare, it allowed them to essentially raid the Medicare coffers and give money to all kinds of leftist agenda ideas. Whether it's the implementation of DEI or ESG, the electric vehicle mandates and the grants that go along with those things. So they're taking away from seniors and the ability of seniors to get cost-effective medical care, while at the same time doing it to fund their own agendas. And again, we could talk a great deal, and we have talked about things like pension, pharmacy benefit management, and other things that get into the increase in medical costs. But that's the bottom line here. So 2 hearings that are going to be happening. I believe it's the 30th of April and the 1st of May, one in the House, one in the Senate. You're going to want to check those out. Check out the op-ed that David and I put together. We have it up. I think we're going to have it up. We've tweeted it out, on the CPAC social media pages. So it's good to take a look at that. We are continuing, obviously, just to circle back on the regulatory issue for a second, and the AAF report. As this report came out, another article came out talking about the increased regulatory tempo. Now, we don't know what's going to happen in November. I don't think anybody really can predict what's going to happen in November. We especially if you consider the impact of third parties on the candidates and the campaigns. But at the very least, the Biden administration is hedging their bets as to whether or not they will still be in power come January of 2025. And what that means is that for the next 7 months, 8 months, between now and January of 2025, they are going to be working overtime on the regulatory front. They know that they can't do anything legislatively. They know even after the election in 2024, they won't be able to do anything legislatively. So they have to do what they're doing through the executive branch, through the regulatory process and the regulatory dark matter that we've talked about in the past. So please continue to take a look at what we're doing at the Center for Regulatory Freedom at the CPAC Foundation. In fact, I think we're going to be launching a new portal for that to get you all involved in this. So go and check that out, digital.cpac.org. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'm Andrew Langer, Director of the Center for Regulatory Freedom. Have a great week, everybody, and please stay safe.